Hello and welcome to Naughty Dog in Retrospect. So far in this series of specials from InRetrospectPodcast.com. Chris has spoken to the company co-founder Jason Rubin about the creation of that cantankerous Crash Bandicoot.
It's funny, I'm 43. It was like 23, 24 when we started Crash, so it's almost half a life away. It's been a long time. And looking at how much the industry has changed since then, it's unbelievable.
Pete supped at the sophomore console series Jak and Daxter.
Jak and Daxter would prove to be the franchise they experimented with, a safe bet that they knew would shift units with the backing of a mascotless Sony, a franchise that could tick along nicely while they continue to evolve their craft. To best understand this change, you need to see the Jak and Daxter games as transitions from the old into the new.
And Dan has been declaring his undying adulation for Naughty Dog's unrivaled Uncharted trilogy.
That you can have a serious conversation about morals and ethical integrity about this just shows how far modern gaming has come, and for me, Naughty Dog has been at the forefront of pushing this medium into daring and exciting new territories.
If you missed any of those shows, then please go to our website or subscribe on iTunes, and then you'll never miss a thing. By those that have been deemed worthy to judge since its release, The Last of Us has consistently been hailed as one of the most important titles of our generation.
Naughty Dog has delivered the most riveting, emotionally resonant, story-driven epic of this console generation. The Last of Us emerges through the crumbled blacktop like a climbing vine, green as a burnished emerald.
The Last of Us is visually arresting, mechanically solid, maturely written, and by turns heart-rending, tense, unnerving. Just try your best to stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive.
The developers have carefully pieced together something rarely seen in the industry, a game that surprises at every turn without wrong-footing a player ready to invest serious emotion into the project. A real achievement, and one that respects you as an adult.
What you just heard were a few select words picked out from many reviews in a hail of hyperbolic language usually reserved for artistic expression, not gaming criticism, heaped praise and joy upon Naughty Dog's latest creation. In this episode of Naughty Dog in Retrospect, I never intended to add my voice to the hundreds already clamouring to be heard amidst the others' postulating passion for the title. There are many things in this world that you already know. Fire is hot, elephants can't jump, and The Last of Us is a truly staggering piece of work. From the ground up, every single part of the title is a vision of what games can achieve. A work of realised genius that I don't think, in terms of its place in the history and context of games, will ever be matched. What is more important, though, is not necessarily the position that The Last of Us occupies in the legacy of video game legend, but instead the fact that the game proves that in a whirlwind of cinematic mirroring and narrative progression, developers shouldn't lose sight of the simple fact that a game is, at its best, when it's simply that, a game. Over the course of the past few weeks, the gang here at InRetrospect have hastily recorded how Naughty Dog have been working towards creating the game that isn't. We have all seen it, from Crash Bandicoot to Uncharted. The keen minds hived in the kennel have been slowly removing the tropes that have defined what makes a game a game. From lives to loading screens, Naughty Dog has constantly attempted to blur the lines. However, whereas many praise The Last of Us for its cinematic approach, its polished package and ability to deliver on all of these in spades, for me the elements of the title that mattered the most were the parts where I was reminded that I was playing a game. I've often thought that if video games are going to be considered a relevant art form, a judicial platform for prose and discussion, then they need to embrace the fact that, first and foremost, they are games. For too long, developers have shifted the focus of what it really is to play a game. As developers, Naughty Dog are not blameless in this. In fact, they have a part to play in the much popularised approach that the industry should be copying other mediums, rather than finding its own way of muscling in on social and political discussion, and more importantly, entertainment. It will take an iron-willed critic not to recognise how the embellished elements of cinema and narrative that seeped through into Uncharted slowly degraded certain elements of gameplay and mechanics. Uncharted 3 might be the most visually, dramatically and theatrically developed of all the series, but it's probably the most mechanically stunted of all. Stunted is probably the wrong word to use, but it's inevitable that when you're trying so hard to emulate the successful parts of one section of entertainment, the original parts of the source form will begin to suffer. As Naughty Dog strive for the development of the cinematic form, what made Uncharted a game began to disappear, and I think it suffered for that. I think it's at this point in the podcast that I must warn you that there will be horrible spoilers throughout the show. If you're yet to play The Last of Us, then I'll try and be courteous and refrain from discussing plot points and developments in mechanics. However, at times it might be crucial to the podcast itself to discuss these moments in full, so I can only apologise and say that you have been warned. When I first started playing The Last of Us, I thought it was going to be the game that Naughty Dog had been striving towards after all of these years. The dark brooding shadows, the scrappy and powerful narrative, the beginnings of a cinematic epic. In that opening prologue, you are the typical walking trigger, a ghost being exorcised by a gamer with a control pad, a trope that is becoming all too familiar in gaming.
It's okay, baby, we're safe. We're safe. Hey, we need help.
Stop!
Please. It's my daughter. I think her leg is broken.
Stop right there!
Okay. We're not sick.
Got a couple of civilians in the outer perimeter. Please advise.
Daddy, what about Uncle Tommy?
We're gonna get you to safety and go back for him, okay?
Sir, there's a little girl. But... Yes, sir.
Somebody, we've just been through hell. Okay, we just need... Shit. Please don't. Oh, no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me. I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
It is a beautiful opening, an opening that brought me close to tears. It played to all of Naughty Dog's strengths, but it was a prologue that did make me consider how much input is needed from a viewer for a film to stop being a film and slowly become a game. Because it wasn't the game that was making me respond emotionally to what was happening on screen. It was the acting, direction and narrative twists. Gaming came second. The beginning of The Last of Us is a strange beast because it hides much of what Naughty Dog had implemented into the title. With The Last of Us, I feel that they have realised that sometimes the best way to bring the most out of a story through a gaming device is not to make it more cinematic, but instead to embrace the mechanics that the console was built on. I want to try and avoid the word gamification here, as it's firstly a bit of a misnomer, but because it doesn't really encapsulate the delicate artistry of what Naughty Dog has managed to achieve with The Last of Us. There are some elements of The Last of Us that are heavily influenced by the tropes of gaming gone by, but the difference with Naughty Dog's title is that these parts are either inherently linked with the world that they appear in, or they are effectively shaped as part of the story. To further explain what I mean by elements of game, I don't necessarily refer to mechanics, design or direction, but instead to the things that have been in games since day one. Lives, health, levels, upgrades, collectibles, probably some of the most recognisable parts of the iconography of video games. The overbearing issue of these designs is that they are also well ingrained as elements of games, that we don't question their existence anymore, nor do we ask ourselves how they fit into the world or its narrative. Rarely the game and the story it's telling allow to coexist. To make matters worse, neither of these parts of gaming culture ever explained. It's never revealed what it is about Mario that means he can collect multiple lives and reincarnate at will, nor is there a clear narrative direction as to why his world is presented on a map, broken and sectioned like a mass of quarantine zones. As gamers, we've never developed the habit of questioning what it is about the soldiers in Call of Duty that allow them to regenerate from the brink of death, absorbing the mortal delivery of bullets. And Naughty Dog are guilty of this also. It's never questioned how Nathan Drake can bring himself shuffling gracefully back to the mortal coil, nor how his world is littered with rare treasures that unsettlingly glint in the sun, unseen by everyone but him. These elements are in no way a detriment to games. In my opinion, it is these that define them and make them such valued and interesting experiences. They are the borders that the entertainment exists within, and stripping them out or forgetting their presence can actually harm the way a game works. I believe that with The Last of Us, Naughty Dog has managed to make a cinematic world that exists within a true gaming environment, and that these worlds both infer and explore each other's realms with grace and realism. Each gaming element can be explained and developed, and each cinematic touch is made bolder due to the gameplay elements that surround it. Uncharted might be Naughty Dog's most liberating and thrilling theatrical experience, but The Last of Us is Naughty Dog's greatest game. When you begin playing The Last of Us and you take on the role of Joel, it's easy to be swayed by the amount of beautiful things going on before you. The incredible voice acting and motion capture, the subtle textures and clothing design. Also the music, which is probably the most understated and incredibly powerful soundtrack ever scored for a major AAA title. All of this is placed in front of the gamer on a console allegedly on its last legs, and it's understandable that we cannot see the wood for the trees. For me, those early moments of playing The Last of Us were exactly the experience I'd been waiting for, and indeed had come to expect from Naughty Dog. But then, something happened. It's during one of the opening sections. I was walking into a clearing with Tess, your early partner in the game, and I saw that it was filled with overturned, waist-high boxes. And suddenly, the spell was broken. The illusion of a truly realised world crumbled from my eyes, and The Last of Us, the game, suddenly reared its head.
Here we go.
Let us through.
You guys need to turn around and head back if you know what's good for you.
Our beef isn't with you. We just want Robert. You don't want to do this.
Turn the fuck around and leave now.
I'm not going anywhere without Robert.
Bitch, I will bash your skull unless you turn around and get your dumb ass out of here.
Fuck this.
Take cover!
You ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking kill
I'll
you!
cover you. Get the angle on them.
That early moment was such a mix of emotions for me. On the one hand, these burgeoning spats and conflicts are harrowing and brutal affairs, fully weighted in a terrifying world. But this all clashed with the gaming device of having ample amounts of cover, liberally splayed all over the scene. The issue with this gaming trope, that probably became active during the early development of Gears of War, is that it takes all the surprise away when you enter an area. As the fog of war lifts, seeing a bunch of waist-high structures looming immediately displays that some serious fighting is about to go down. In games like Gears of War, and even Uncharted, the gaming element of defensive cover has always been a point to just ignore and brush under the carpet. As gamers, we are told not to question why, at so many locations around the world, there are so many areas fit for battle. We've just learned to accept it. Accept it and move on. Both the previous titles mentioned are, though, highly stylized games, and so this design element of the title can be easily ignored. I mean, you would rather have the contrived cover than none at all, right? However, in the dramatically realised world of The Last of Us, this early gaming trope could have very easily undone all of Naughty Dog's hard work. It's hard to forgive such overt gaming elements in a realistic world. On the other hand, though, when I questioned why this cover was conveniently lying around, I found that I could come up with answers. I thought that, sure, the hostile nature of the many zones that I ventured in, it would not be uncommon for people to make barriers, to use the world around them to stop, prevent, or even slow down the would-be bandits, the stumbling clickers, or the clumsy infected. Anything that could be torn down, pushed over to provide a suitable area of defence makes sense in the world that Naughty Dog had designed, and it was through this thought that I was able to stop seeing this traditional gaming device as a blot on the game's design, and instead see it as a way of informing what the world 20 years after the outbreak had become. Despite these early signs of Naughty Dog's newfound ability to develop and merge gaming elements with cinematic and theatrical gameplay, they do struggle to hit the crucial balance, both in these opening and indeed latter sections of the game. In the beginning, the main area of imbalance comes from the character of Tess, but I must stress that this is a fault that is caused not for the want of trying. In some ways, the character of Tess is the most obvious gaming element in the game. She's a character built in order to create a human and mechanical attachment to The Last of Us. Her only real purpose is to stretch further the animosity that Joel feels for Ellie, and also to hold your hand in the early sections of the title, thus getting you ready to understand both the emotional pull and mechanical pushes of The Last of Us. Narratively, she performs this role with grace, but strange glitches mechanically see her run into bandits when she leaps out of cover, and then they don't react, and provide rare, unforgivable moments of play. The issue with Tess is that she has been designed to fulfill a typical gaming element. She's a tutorial device that, like levels and cover, we've begun to ignore, never question in games. But what makes Tess stand out is that it's rare that these holders of hands are folk that we essentially care about. The early training exercises in Jak and Daxter, for example, are delivered by the patronising and tired delivery of Samos the Sage, a perfect example of hand-holding that in no way informs the game. In ways, Naughty Dog attempts to make Tess an integral gaming element and a story device in one, and in this respect she does fail and instead causes some harm to the illusion. But just like with the boxes and the cover, as I started to ask questions of Tess, the game was giving me answers as to why Naughty Dog had added in such overt gaming elements. I believe that Tess acts the way she does jumping out of cover and bumping into enemies that don't react. In order to both give you space when you're in that cover, therefore leaping into enemies, but also to show that she can operate and take care of herself, that she's not dependent on you. A fact that makes her early sacrifice in the game hard to take, as these early counters makes it believable to think that despite the overwhelming odds, she might be able to survive. It's just a shame that this gaming element intended to move you from hand-holding to independence, while also moving the story forward, has some disastrous consequences. Still, it's another brilliant example of how Naughty Dog are constantly challenging the traditional gaming elements, and even though it's not perfect, Tess is another element implemented within the world to both inform and embellish.
No. No, no, no.
What happens now?
What are you doing, Tess?
Oh, God. Maybe they had a map, or something to tell us where they were going.
How far are we gonna take
this? As far as it needs to go. Where was this lab of theirs?
Oh, she never said. She only mentioned that it was someplace out west.
What are we doing here? This is not us.
What do you know about us? About me?
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really? Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our chance.
It is over, Tess! Now, we tried. Let's just go home.
I'm not going anywhere. This is my last stop.
What?
Our luck had to run out sooner or later.
You going on?
No, don't touch me.
Holy shit. She's infected.
Joel.
Let me see.
I didn't mean for this.
Show it to me. Oh, Christ.
Oops, right? Give me your arm. This was 3 weeks. I was bitten an hour ago, and it's already worse. This is fucking real, Joel. You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go.
No. That was your crusade. I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look. There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's. They're here.
Damn it.
I can buy you some time, but you have to run.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There is no way that...
I will not turn into one of those things. Come on. Make this easy for me.
I can find...
No, just go! Just fucking go.
Most of the other gaming tropes in The Last of Us are pretty easy to spot from here on in. Collecting ammo, upgrading weapons, upgrading Joel, crafting items from scavenged goods, and the most gamey of all elements, Joel's ability to hear and see through walls. All of it is hyper-realistic when compared to the gritty atmosphere of the game. In truth, none of it really feels like it should be able to inform the world around it. Once again, as gamers, they're all just gaming elements used in the majority of survival horror games to do nothing more than ratchet up the tension and help deal with increasing threats. They're in no way helping to improve the experience, so just forget about them. The Last of Us, though, is not that simple. And just like with any great piece of art, there is a reason and purpose behind every master stroke, even if the artist did not know why they put it there to begin with. The pattern of play in The Last of Us is typical of that gaming genre, but the way it's designed within the world helps it connect far more with the characters than we would probably perceive from the off. As a character, Joel is a scavenger smuggler, and probably has no more moral lines to cross in the 20 years since we first encountered him at the beginning of the game. He has perfected the art of finding out useful items. He doesn't waste his time collecting that which cannot be utilised in some purposeful way. When picking up and crafting items, it's not just a device to increase tension, but it's also informing us of Joel's character. It shows us how capable he is, and also how he has changed from the person he used to be. From his well-furnished home at the start of the game, to scrabbling for rags and sharp blades, he's become more focused and practical. The graces of his former life have been utterly abandoned, and this is his life now.
You wait here. Now, the girl. Is she alive?
What girl? I don't know no girl.
Fuck! Focus right here, right here. I'll pop your goddamn knee off. The girl.
She's alive. She's David's newest pet.
Where?
In the town. In the town.
Now you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to. Mark it.
It's right there. You can verify it. Go ask him. Go on. I tell you, I ain't lying. I ain't.
Fuck you, man. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
It's almost heartbreaking to see a man become so proficient in his ability to defend his own life in such unglamorous and unglorious ways. Through this simple mechanic, Naughty Dog has not ignored its ability to tell us more about Joel. Through this simple mechanic of scavenging and collecting items, Naughty Dog has not ignored its powerful ability to tell us more about who Joel has become in 2 decades. This is the fact that is also represented in the listening mode feature. Some may say it's a cheat, and to those people I say, go to the options menu and turn it off. To others who stick with it, I would say that the mode is the attuned senses of a man who has had to fight, scratch, and kill to survive for far too long. It's not unbelievable to think that between him and Tess, they have worked on their ability to listen for the slightest sound, to gauge an idea of where enemies are. The listening mode is almost feral in its ability it affords Joel. For having this skill, he becomes less of a human, which makes his unravelling love for Ellie even more believable. Overall, when considering the refined gaming elements hidden within plain sight in the menu of The Last of Us, they do more than inform us of who Joel has become since he lost his daughter. Their most important job is to help us connect to the story and make it more believable and emotionally relevant. Now, this will come as a surprise, but there's not much in The Last of Us that I can relate to directly. But the gaming elements used by Naughty Dog do help you as a player to develop some empathy to that which the characters are going through. Constantly, you are being made to make difficult choices in the gaming world. Not only with whom to trust, which way to tackle an area teeming with enemies, but also with what items to craft and which abilities to enhance. At every step, the player is being required to make difficult choices in increasingly tense and uninviting circumstances. As the game progresses, you are punished more for choosing to make a health kit when you should have made a Molotov, and maybe increasing your resistance to attack would have improved things rather than your ability to hear a few feet further in the distance. Even though this is a development tactic to slowly develop and bridge the difficulty curve in the game, each choice we are making directly begins to alter how we feel about the characters in the game. If the decisions we made with crafting, pill popping, or direction of traversal had no direct impact on the game with Joel and Ellie, then we would find it difficult to understand their process when they have to make challenging and difficult choices as characters. However, as we've been living in their world almost, making the same decisions that they do, but within gaming elements, our exposure helps us understand and emotionally connect with the story. The thing about all these gaming tropes being implemented so early on in The Last of Us means that when you first encounter fetch quests and A to B tasks, you don't groan or conspire against the game. Instead, you're more endeavoured to understand and make sense of it within the world, because it's obvious that Naughty Dog have purposely placed everything within the game for a reason. Take the collectibles, for example. They're just pieces of discarded jewellery from fallen fireflies or abandoned diaries. They're not just items of treasure or dog tags that have no bearing on the story. The comic books are also a crucial development to the relationship between Joel and Ellie. The fact that you have to go out of your way to find them means that you are effectively adding to Joel as a character and how you perceive him. Someone who is putting in extra effort to take Ellie's mind off the horror. Even trophies are practically non-existent within the game. Having a brief glance at the trophy list reveals that it's almost impossible, bar one crafting trophy, to conjure up the signature ding during the game, meaning that you're encouraged to see these tasks through to the end rather than giving up after getting trophies for the first 10 or 15 collectibles. This all has an effect on the perception of the typical quests and roadblocks that appear in the game. When you need to get a battery to get a car to start, it seems reasonable that it would be an element that would need to be scavenged, and that when the part has already been stolen, the character relationship, the gaming elements that inform us of Joel's kill or be killed attitude, mean that this doesn't come as a shock and a contrived way to extend play. The Last of Us is a game. It's probably more of a game than you ever thought it was. I know it's a strange thing to say, but as the medium comes to terms with its own identity, its broadening demographic and competitive market, The Last of Us marks a period where the best of gaming elements can inform and enhance the cinematic prowess so many companies attain for. Without these elements, without the answers to the questions that as gamers we so often ignore, I wouldn't have felt so much emotion and attachment to the game as I did after my 16 or so hours with the title. The choices I made as a gamer were reflected on the characters on screen. The areas I entered suited my playing style, but also they bended, twisted, and merged the narrative of the game. The methods employed to challenge the gameplay and collect items were insights into the world and the people around us, not ways to stretch out the game. As I mentioned before, the real art to implementing this merger of theatrics and gameplay is balance. A balance that is compromised at the beginning with Tess, and one bit at the end. In my opinion, the final movement of The Last of Us is probably the weakest point in the game, as Naughty Dog shows us, as players and viewers of entertainment, what happens when you get the balance wrong. especially in an emotionally charged title like The Last of Us. Now, on the approach to the operating room to rescue Ellie for the final time, the combat mechanic is almost thrown out of the window by Naughty Dog, and they just throw enemies at the screen. No doubt this is to give the story an element of crescendo, but instead, in my mind, it reveals all the gaming elements and strips them bare. They begin to lose all coherence and connection with the story, and suddenly, as a player, I was hankering for a more cinematic end stage. Then, when I was finally greeted with Ellie unconscious on the table, ready to rescue her from the fireflies, I had to contend with the devilish doctor holding a scalpel. Before this moment, I was saying over and over and over again, please don't make me choose, please don't make me choose, please don't make me choose. I did not want the responsibility of choosing what was best for Joel, Ellie, or indeed the world. The storytelling in The Last of Us is so good that it's often difficult to remember that it's Joel's story that you're playing, and it's not your own. And no matter how much it irks you at that moment, you have to shoot the doctor, and you have to take Ellie out of there.
Jesus.
Doctor?
What are you doing in here? I won't let you take her. Don't.
No! Fucking animal!
Carrie, shut the hell up. Come on, baby girl. I got you. I got you. Oh, shit.
However, this might be an obvious move for some, but for me, I didn't want to shoot. I assumed that in the vastly scarier game of rock, paper, scalpel that we were entwined with, I assumed that me advancing with a gun to the doctor who said that he would kill me if I stepped any closer, it would be enough to persuade him to let me take Ellie. But instead of moving, the doctor stood still, arm outstretched like a Gormley statue draped in green. As I walked further forward, he proclaimed that I shouldn't, but I carried on. I expected that I would at some point trigger some end state and Naughty Dog would let me know where my boundaries lie within the gaming world, but nothing happened. We both stood there, arms raised. I decided to shoot into the ceiling. Nothing. So I chose to take the drastic action of shooting the man, but I thought that a bullet through the foot would be enough to warn him off and not cause him any mortal injury. After all, just several minutes ago, I shot a man in the crotch, and he was fine, until I penetrated his skull with lead.
That's it, move. Give me an excuse. Which way? What the fuck you doing? Keep walking. I said keep walking. Where's the operating room? I ain't got time for this. Where? Where? Top floor, the far end.
But my plans are foiled when upon shooting him in the toes, he fell on the floor and failed to get up. And that was it. That was the final thing I was to do in The Last of Us. Shoot a man in the foot in a moment that was meant to be cinematic and climactic. All I wanted it to do was at least include some of the gaming elements that had previously set the rules and boundaries. As I mentioned earlier, you are playing Joel's story, but it's difficult not to get involved, and just at the wrong moment, the game trusted me to recognize the cinematic turn and forget I was playing a game. Naughty Dog was never going to get the balance right all the time. But what The Last of Us does show us as gamers is that when all the parts are implemented well and refined together, games can be their own form, whilst also taking parts from other types of entertainment. The Last of Us is a paramount achievement in gaming, a landmark, but I think its place in the history of gaming should be remembered for more than its narrative and theatrical achievements. What is far more important to me is how Naughty Dog has managed to develop the game and create a title that is first and foremost a video game, not an interactive silver screen. The Last of Us is a crucial part of our gaming language, as it finally proves, in an industry that seems to be always striving to be something else, that gaming elements that make up our vocabulary are a crucial part of the medium, and without them, all games will be weak and weary experiences.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
Coming up next week on Naughty Dog in Retrospect, the team come back together to discuss Naughty Dog in their entirety, looking at their past, their present and their future.
As much as we want to say The Last of Us, oh, isn't this amazing, and killer IP and all that sort of stuff, really, when it comes right down to it, Uncharted is absolutely the property that people know over The Last of Us. The Last of Us was critically acclaimed and sold very, very well. But it sold, I would imagine, very well because it had the name from, it had the phrase from the creators of Uncharted.
And I don't think The Last of Us is a console seller.
If I was buying a new console, I want, the first kind of game I want to test it, for sheer spectacle, Dan, as you pointed out, would be Uncharted 4.
Is a depressing...
Yeah,
oh, no,
Sam wants the road, whereas I want Uncharted 4. Come on, Dan.
By far, Uncharted is the most franchise-friendly. You can put it like that.
You couldn't make a Coke Zero game with Ellie and Joel, could you?
No, not really. Not so much, no.
It's the end of the world. Buy a Subway.
Oh, God.
All this and more on the final episode of Naughty Dog in Retrospect.